Okay, so this is our first geometry section, section 1-1. That's topic 1, section 1. Points, lines, and planes. So this is an introduction into the basics of geometry. Topic 1 is all about the tools of geometry, okay? So our first little section here is what we call undefined terms, okay? So these three terms are undefined in geometry. Now you may be like, but wait, you wrote a definition. That is just a description of those words. These are technically undefined terms, okay? So if you ever see a question that asks, what are three undefined terms of geometry? Point, line, and plane. So those are what those are, okay? So the first one is a point, okay? It indicates a location and has no size. So we usually just do like a dot, okay? And that could be a point. Let's call this one B. And then we could have another point, C, right? So those are 2 points. And the way we name them is whenever it's on a picture, we just name point B. But if I was describing this point in like a question, I would write out point B and point C. You have to write out the word point, okay? If you just write B and you don't have the word point, I don't know what you're talking about here. So that's a no-go. You have to write the word point. And that's going to be a key thing in all of geometry. So if you can get that down now to make sure to be specific, not just write letters without anything part of them, you'll be set. So our next one is a line. So it's a straight path that extends in two opposite directions with no end. Okay? And it contains infinitely many points. So a line can be any 2 points can connect to be a line. Okay. All lines are always straight. I wish I had a ruler, but all lines are always straight. Okay. It doesn't matter which direction, if they're horizontal, vertical, diagonal, those are all lines as long as they are straight. That's what a definition of a line is. And as long as they continue forever. If it does not continue forever, it's going to be something different that we'll get to later, but a line has to continue forever in both directions, okay? So now there's multiple ways to name a line. So here we have a picture of a line, and I'm going to name this one with a little letter up here. Notice I put a little M, okay? That might be hard to see, but that is an M. That is a small letter. It's not a point on this line. So you see how B and C are points on this line. M is not a point on this line. So lowercase letter, it's just really telling us what the name of this line is. So there's two different ways to name this line. We could either name it line M. So just like they did here, there's a little L here, and they named it line L. Okay, I could name this one line M. Or I can name it using 2 points. So we only need 1 point to name a point. Now we need 2 points to name a line. So line, I have to show what it is. I cannot just write letters without anything. Line BC. So I can name it line M with this little M and just need one letter that's not a point on the line, or I can name it with 2 different points on the line with the line on top. Now it has to have both the arrows because a line continues in 2 opposite directions with no end. It has to continue forever. Okay? So those are lines. Next up, we have a plane. Okay, not an airplane, but a plane, which is a flat surface that extends with no end, contains infinitely many lines. And lines contain infinitely many points, so planes also include infinitely many points. Okay, so for a plane, they're usually drawn like how they're drawn here. I'm going to draw one a little bit of a different way. They usually look somewhat like a parallelogram or a rhombus, but it's usually just talking about it in essence of a plane. When there's not letters on the corners of the plane, it's just discussing the plane. So we can have points on this plane. So this one has points A, B, C. I'm going to do points T, M, and H, okay? And then you notice this little P over here. This P doesn't have a point, so I'm going to use a different letter here. Let's use J, okay? So just using a random letter. Now that letter does not have a point at all. Oops. Move my camera a little bit. That letter does not have a point at all, okay? So there are two different ways we can name this plane. I can name this, remember we got to have the word. I can't just have random letters, so I can name it plane J, because J does not have a point, or I can name it using 3 points, but they can't be on the same line. So if T, M, and H were all collinear, which is a word I'll get to in a moment, I could not name them with those points. But I can name it plane T, M, H. So that is an acceptable way to name this plane. Just like here, they named it plane A, B, C. Those are 3 different points that aren't on the same line. So it is acceptable to name it that way. And we could even connect these two. And I could have line TH. And I could even point out point M on here. Remember, each one of these is very specific about what it is. It's not just random letters written out, okay? So keep that in mind. Next up, so those are our 3 undefined terms, okay? Those are the key things. Points, lines, and planes are the 3 terms, undefined terms of geometry. Next up, we have defined terms that are just keywords for geometry. The first one being collinear. And think about what linear means. It means line. So to be collinear, it's points that lie on the same line, okay? And here's a trick. Any 2 points are collinear. So I could draw a dot here, and I could draw a dot here, or I could draw a dot over here. And I can connect any 2 points, and those would be collinear. That's a very important part about collinear, that any 2 points are collinear. But I could have infinite number of points on this line, right? And these are all collinear because they all lie on the same line. With that same idea, we talk about coplanar, okay? So plane being the same plane. So it's points and lines that lie on the same plane. So in my plane right here, my plane J, I can say that points T, M, and H, I'm going to write that out, points T, comma, M, comma, H. Okay, so those are different points. I'm talking about 3 different points. Notice how that's different than the plane TMH. I'm talking about the points T, M, and H. I can say that those points are coplanar. So hopefully that makes sense. Points that lie on the same plane. So now, let's talk about a ray. A ray is a part of a line that has one endpoint and then extends in one direction. So we know a line goes on in both directions, while a ray only continues on in one direction. And that's actually how we name it as well. Looks like I drew an arrow on both of those, but I did not. So I could draw a point and it extends only in one direction. And let's call this H and K. So I could have ray HK. So we see that ray HB, ray HK. Now it's really important that you don't include the arrow on both sides of those because it's only talking about a ray, not a line that continues off in both directions. And our last one, a segment. And this is what we're actually going to be dealing with a lot more often than rays. Is segments are part of a line that consists of 2 endpoints and all points between them. Okay, I should say points. So I have a segment AB right here. And so I just put a little bar over AB. So let's draw another one on here. Let's use TH. And I could have segment TH. Okay? Now a key thing, a difference between segments and lines is segments you can actually measure. Now, I'm not talking about taking out a ruler and measuring this, but we can discuss this. Like this could be 6 feet, clearly not to scale, but I can actually measure that segment. For a line that continues infinitely in directions, I cannot measure what this line is. Now, I can measure a segment on this line and say that that is 3 feet, but I cannot measure the whole line because it continues on infinitely. I can only measure segments, okay? So these are the textbook practice problems. To help you guys get practice with this, textbook page 7, problems 1 through 10, and problem 36. Now, a key thing is making sure you name these properly, okay? If you're just writing letters down with nothing above them, nothing in front of them, you're doing it incorrectly. I would highly recommend looking at the example problems that come before the practice problems. A key thing about that here is practice problems are in the blue sections, okay? So it'll say practice in blue at the top. I decided to just take out the textbook to show you. So here we have section 1-1, points, lines, and planes. There's the things we talked about are in these notes sections. And then if we flip over, so this is page 5, flip over, page 6 is the start of those example problems. These example problems, the ones in red, are the most important. Now you notice these are not your practice problems, okay? It says page 7 for practice problems. This is on page 6. The red problems are example problems. They give you the answer so that way you know how to answer the practice problems. So if we go over here to page 7, we can see we still have a few red example problems, but then in blue, those are the practice problems. These are where your problems start. On page 7, 1 through 5, and then we have to turn the page to get to 6 through 10, and then we can also try number 36 down here. So those are how the practice problems work, and there's also available in the textbook online, you'll find the same thing, along with video explanations of every single one of these example problems. They walk you through step by step how to do these problems and what they're actually looking for. And all of these practice problems are explained in these example problems. So make sure you use those to your advantage. So that was section 1-1.